So what I'm going to do is I am going to drop everyone back out. It'll just be me on the screen, and I will do the welcome. Okay.
Bill dropped out. Okay.
Faith, firearms, freedom. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hi, folks. Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio. It's a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I am your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran. So glad you can be with us again this week, and thank you for everyone who's watching live. This is our 200th episode Extravaganza, and we're recording live with the members of the Reformation Gun Club and with our cast. We've got some special guests joining me today, plus the entire cast of the show joining us. Before I bring them on, I do want to mention that speaking of the Reformation Gun Club, I want to tell you about what we do here. We are a listener-funded podcast. That means that we rely on the support of our listeners to keep the lights on. For as little as $1 a month, members of the Reformation Gun Club get access to hundreds of hours of exclusive content, some cool swag, invitations to take part in live shows like this one, and the satisfaction of knowing that they made all of this possible. And if you'd like to find out more, and if maybe you'd like to join them, go check it out at armedlutheran.us/gun club to get all the details. All right, 200th episode Extravaganza. Let's bring our cast on. You know him, you love him. Sergeant Bill Sylvia is with us.
Hi, everybody.
And our lovely hunting guide extraordinaire, Mia Anstein. Welcome. And the only one who got the memo about Crazy Sweater Night, the pistol packing pastor, Pastor John Bennett. Welcome, everybody. Thank you guys for being here.
Looking forward to this for a long time.
Me
too.
It's surprising that it's been a long time. It's been 4 years now. It's 200 episodes, and 4 years later, it's hard to believe we got to this point. Did any of you think that we would still be doing this 4 years later?
Maybe.
I gave us 5 years, but no, I thought we would. There's always good stuff to talk about, and thanks to our wonderful news media, there's always topics.
Oh yeah,
that you relate stuff to. There's just always things to talk about. So,
well, you guys have had no shortage of good stuff to share over the years. Let's go around the table, starting with the guy who's been with us from day one, Bill Sylvia. Do you remember how this whole thing started? Do you remember how? I mean, when I approached you, did you think that was a crazy idea? Did you? What?
I thought I lost a bet, didn't I? Didn't we Rochambeau or something? I don't remember. No, actually, when you first told me about it, I didn't think it was a crazy idea. My first thought was, hasn't somebody already done this? And then I went looking on my podcast or whatever on my iPhone and was like, wow, nobody really has.
Yeah. Well, and I remember I tried to soft sell it by suggesting that it would only be like a minute and we'd call it the ballistic minute, right?
Yes. And you knew better. You knew me well enough to know a minute. You're like, hey, I'm Sergeant Bill. This is your ballistic minute. And we're out.
I remember you coming back and saying, we might want to call it the ballistic 10 minutes.
Yeah. I'm pretty good at 10 minutes. I can keep it somewhere within that 10-minute window. Yep.
So, favorite episode, favorite moment from the past 4 years, looking back on all of it now?
Wow, I didn't know there was going to be a test.
I'm panicking right now.
Yeah.
Everybody's pulling up their browsers and going back through the episodes to see.
Oh God. Favorite moment? I think favorite moment is always when we get to hang out, whether it's talking about the show or shooting or whatever it may be. When I go for a ride and unannounced show up at your house to say hi. And he's like, hey, you're here. Y'all can't do that. Well, You could. They could, but that's a commute.
That'd be a long drive.
Yeah.
Now, where did the idea to start recording? I mean, early on, especially, the mobile studio was sort of your thing. Yeah. You had the squawker going on in the back as you're doing your monologue. What made you decide that was the place to do it?
Probably a deadline. I think I did the first few shows, and I recorded them in a nice quiet bedroom at home and tried to, have some pillows nearby to kind of soak up some echo and make it sound good, because I don't have that wonderful studio stuff that you've got. And then I was probably at work. I had a notebook and was like, oh man, I need to do this. I need to send this in before the night's over. So, I'm at work. I need to keep the radio on. I need to hear what's going on, but I need to turn it down so it's not, like a normally is, Charlie 105. It's just crazy dispatcher that likes to hear their own voice, and then officers that talk on the radio too dang long. So I turned it way down, and I sent you a message saying, hey, if this is terrible with all the background sound, let me know, and I'll record it again when I get home. You were like, no, it's actually kind of cool sounding. So, right. Yeah.
It's your calling card now.
Yeah. I mean, gives it some, what's that crazy word I heard somebody say? It makes it authenticious. It's not a word.
What is this past 4 years? What does it mean to you? Is it what is all of this meant? Yeah, I mean, gray hair. Yeah.
I'm getting old, man. Older, grayer, fatter. It's really neat. That's a really tough question. I will say this: in this school year. So my sister retired from teaching and being an administrator in schools last spring with like 30 years in teaching. And my kids go to a private school, a little Catholic school here. I was going to say in town, but it's nowhere near where I live. And my sister applied and got a spot at the school for the 4th grade teacher, which my son will be in her class next year. And every Monday when I come into work, or every Tuesday, she's always like, hey, I heard your clip. I will listen to the show. And so she's my target audience, I guess.
We're getting in there to the Catholic school teachers as well. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's to me, that's kind of neat. It's a very personal motivation to keep going, but it's kind of neat.
So John, you were next to join this crazy adventure. And we alluded to this recently in our last month's live show. You've got a story about how we originally connected and how you ended up ultimately on the show.
Yeah, it's kind of a scandalous story too.
It really is.
So I used to be pretty active on one of the online gun forums, xdtalk.com, and somebody posted a review that you had done for some firearm. I don't remember what it even was. And I'm browsing through it on my phone, and I click on the links at Armed Lutheran, and next thing I know, I'm looking at pornography. And this wasn't like your soft Cinemax after 10 p.m. kind of pornography either. And I thought to myself,
it's the Christmas sweater. It's the Christmas
sweater. I thought to myself, this has to be a legitimate website, because who names their website armedlutheran.us? And so I go on to Google, try to pull up a sitemap for the website, and I noticed that on the desktop version of the site, no porn. On the mobile version of the site, Well, you know. and so I contact you, and you even nicely offered me a free holster just for, cluing you in on what was going on. But
it was bad.
Yeah. So next thing you know, I find you on Facebook, and then you came along one day with a post on the Armed Lutheran it wasn't the podcast at the point yet, just your Facebook page for Armed Lutheran, and said, "Hey, is there any pastors out there who are interested in helping me with the project?" And I replied, and here I am. So,
do you regret it yet?
Almost, not yet.
Pause. Wow.
Many hours that I can never get back later. I'm still here, so obviously something's working. But it.
Did you? Do you remember those first few episodes? I've gone back and listened. Believe it or not, I've listened to every single episode, especially since I post everything on the Reformation Gun Club, and I try to recycle things for our radio station out in Oregon. And those first few interviews that we did together, we didn't quite. I mean, it's not the fun-loving. I don't know. We hadn't quite meshed yet. And it's a little bit different. Do you remember how that felt? Do you remember what you thought about those first few shows? You came back, so it must not have been terrible, but.
Well, after I turned down that initial free holster, I figured maybe if I stick around long enough, you'll throw some more free stuff my way. So.
Still waiting?
No, the episodes. For me, everything was very scripted for me. We would agree on an article, and I would send you notes of where I wanted to make comments, and I scripted all my comments. And then the first time that I did it without any preparation, I thought, why the heck am I preparing this? It's so much better when I don't prepare. I can't say the same for my Sunday morning sermons, but for Armed Lutheran Radio, when I'm not scripted, when it's the two of us, it seems to go much better.
Yep. Favorite episode that we've done together over the years? There've been some doozies.
The one that always comes to mind is Steve Anderson and the Pooper Scooper episode.
I have that one on my list as well. That one with the Pooper Scooper
time after time
on your AK.
I think that's my favorite. Yeah.
Your thoughts about the past 4 years and what it's meant to you?
It's been a nice escape from me from, sometimes being a pastor. Yeah, for me, it's the greatest job in the world. I also probably have better job security than either of you, any of the rest of you. So, yeah, I love it. And but it's nice to have a break from that where I can talk about things that interest me. And just so happens that firearms and freedom and theology all are on my list of things I like to talk about. So it works out great.
It works. And my original idea for that segment was that I would have a different pastor on every week. And once you came on, it was like, nope, I found because the guns, the firearm stuff and the theology, and it just worked. So it's been great. All right, Mia, you were the last to join us. Episode 29 was your first segment. The way we connected was interesting because I found out that you had shared an episode on Twitter. Do you remember how you heard about the show and what you thought of it at the time?
I was trying to think about that a while back, that I'm not sure how you showed up in the Twitter feed, but it's like, I'm a Lutheran and this Lutheran thing pops up. And so I was like, what is this? And fortunately, I didn't happen to have been a guest on your show. Good thing I didn't hear about that.
Right. So I found out that you were on the cover a Field and Stream.
Yeah, fully
Look at
clothed.
Fully clothed.
Look at all those clothes.
I know. I know.
I actually brag about that quite a bit. Like I'm on the cover of a magazine with all kinds of clothes on.
Yes. Layers of clothing. Yes. And first American woman on the cover? Is that right?
Yeah.
Very cool.
You're the one that pointed that out when you interviewed me. I actually was like, oh, well, there's been other women. And then you were like, but you're the first American. I was like, oh, cool.
So I invited you onto the show, not even thinking about you being being a regular contributor, but because of this, and didn't know that you were an LCMS Lutheran. And you'd been writing and blogging and doing YouTube videos for a while at that point. So what did you think when I asked you to do this?
I thought it was fun also. And it's actually been really fun because I can use some of the writing ideas can come here, or some of the stuff I do here, I transform into articles. So it's worked out pretty well.
Very cool. Favorite episode?
Just when you put Sergeant Bill on the spot, I have spit Funyuns out my nose. I've spit coffee out my nose when I'm driving to other states. And it's always the pistol packing Padre that just cracks me up. And I always think I should be writing notes about this stuff because I'll never remember, but you can't write notes while you're driving. So I just laugh and continue on my way.
Well, you can. It's not advised for your personal safety.
Yes, exactly right. All right. What does this last 4 years mean to you? It's hard to believe it's been 4 years now.
It seems like it's just flown by. It's actually really cool. And to me, it's really neat to see how the show has evolved and what you've done with it. It's pretty interesting, and it's fun to be a part of.
Well, I'm happy that you guys are a part of it, and really appreciate the hard work that you guys put into it. We are going to take a quick break, folks, and we're going to come back with the wayward member of our crew. Aaron Israel will join us right after this. Welcome back to Armed Lutheran Radio's 200th episode, Extravaganza. We're joined now by our long-lost contributor, Aaron Israel is back with us. How are you, brother?
Hey, doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's really good to see you. We've missed you. For those who you joined the show, for those who are new to the show, who maybe started watching this year, you joined us back in week 8, I think. Back in, but how we got connected was back, I think, in year 1 or year 2 BP. That would be before podcast. You were a firearms instructor at the time. You were writing articles for Personal Defense Network, and one of them caught my eye about church security, and I shared that article and commented on it, and then you invited me to take your class. It didn't really work out. Couldn't figure out a good time to do it. Then one day you get an invitation to do this thing called Armed Lutheran Radio. Do you remember that? Do you remember that? What you thought about that initially?
Yeah, I do. It was kind of out of the blue, but I'd never been on a podcast or really done any interviews, but it was exciting, and I was glad to get the opportunity. So glad it worked out.
And you were probably glad to find that we didn't force you to convert, right?
Yeah. You let me stay Baptist, and so that worked out. I didn't have to go back and get sprinkled or anything like that, so we're good.
Well, one baptism, right? One baptism for all.
There you go.
All we need. Favorite episode during that time? You really did some terrific stuff, and I really appreciate all the work you put in over those. It was 3 years. Favorite episode for you?
I always like the roundtable episodes wherever we were able to get together like we're doing now and just kind of have all the contributors on at once and, go through topics together and get all the different opinions. And that was always real fun for me. So.
Yep. Now, you left us, I think episode 137 was your last episode. I know. So briefly explain why you gave up firearms instruction, and there was a reason behind it that makes perfect sense. What was your sense of what was changing in for firearms instruction, and why you gave it up, and what are you doing nowadays?
Well, there's really a combination of factors. At the time when I gave it up, I had just taken some big steps in my day job and my personal career, taking on more responsibility that required a whole lot more travel, and giving up the weekends to teach, even when I could fill a class, was kind of not something I was super excited about anymore, since I was spending so much time away from the family. So I didn't want to be on the range all day Saturday. I'd rather be hanging out with them. So that was the first factor. But then also, it was becoming real difficult to fill classes. I guess, and it's the gun culture is very motivated by politics, obviously. And during the Obama years, it was actually kind of a boon, not only for gun sales, but for people teaching gun classes, because people buy guns, they want to get trained with them. And everybody's gotten somewhat complacent since we have a president and an administration that's viewed as very pro Second Amendment. People aren't worried about losing their rights. So gun sales are down and people aren't taking as many classes as a result. So it just became very difficult to fill the classes. And the people that you got into the classes were just kind of trying to check the block and really weren't interested in doing anything but getting their license and then moving on and just having that card in their wallet. So with that being the case, I was always interested in teaching people who really wanted to be there. So the licensing market wasn't really for me. So I just decided to take a step back, and one of these days, if it comes back, maybe I'll get back into it. So, well,
Sergeant Bill and I took your class, enjoyed it thoroughly. I really apprecited.
That was good. That was good.
I forgot about that. So what did looking back at 3 years on Armed Lutheran Radio, what did that all that time mean to you?
I was just great. Always happy to meet new people and make friends. Meeting you guys and getting to go on the road with you to Louisiana for that IDPA competition, getting back into that, was really cool. And, just the camaraderie that comes with it. I'm hoping to see you guys more. So I'm actually shooting a match tomorrow. I'm trying to get back in the saddle a little bit and get on the range some more. So I'm gonna go shoot some steel out at Crescent tomorrow. So just getting back into the flow of things and new people and having friends I can talk to gun stuff about that are kind of like-minded is always a good thing. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that. And I miss being on with you guys weekly. Even though I'm not teaching anymore, I do miss the show. So I'm still a fan. I still listen in my car when I'm driving around the country and, flying in airplanes and all that kind of stuff. So
good deal. Good deal. Well, we miss you and thank you so much for everything that you did for the show over the time that you were on. And thank you for being here today to celebrate.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have another special guest to introduce you to as we continue with our 200th episode Extravaganza here on Armed Lutheran Radio. Welcome back. It's our 200th episode Extravaganza. We're joined now by the host of one of the longest-running pro-gun podcasts ever. It is Bob Mayne of the Handgun World podcast. Bob, welcome.
Hey, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Lloyd.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, you're here with the rest of the cast. You've been doing this. You've been doing this for a long time. You're up to what, 491?
I'm at 493. I posted that tonight, which will release tomorrow on the 15th. 493.
Wow. Yeah. That's awesome.
A couple of them. Yeah.
Now, for those of you wondering why Bob Mayne is here, aside from the fact that he's awesome, the reason is really simple, and I've told this story before. Whenever people ask how I got started, I started blogging back in 2012, but I started listening to pro-gun podcasts. And there were two that I gravitated to for a couple of years before I started the podcast, and Bob Mayne's Handgun World was one of them. I just instantly gravitated to it because you're the everyman. You're not special forces. You're not law enforcement. You're a guy like me who's sitting in your car driving to work, who's talking with authority about guns in your mobile studio.
In the Handgun World mobile studio. That's right.
That's right. I really enjoyed the podcast early on. Like I said, I gravitated to it because it just spoke to me. What inspired you to get started, to start doing a podcast?
Well, I was at that time in my job, I had a lot of windshield time. I was driving everywhere, all over the whole state of Texas. And there was only so much, business that I wanted to do, actual business, while I was driving. And so I wanted something to pass the time. And I had been thinking about starting a podcast anyway. And I thought, well, I got a lot of time here in my car, so why don't I just try recording? And what's interesting is I actually recorded 2 episodes that I never released, just so I could figure out how to record while I was driving my car. But I wanted to do it, and driving in my car is when I had the most time to do it.
Yep. Well, the other thing that I liked and have always liked about your show is the fact that you never shied away from talking not just about guns, but about your faith.
Yes.
And I really do appreciate that. Talk about why that was important to include in your show when so many others seem to focus solely on the gun side of things and the political
because
side.
I wanted my listeners to know who I was and who I am, and that they're listening to a real person who is authentic and not just somebody, trying to hide themselves. One of the things I don't like is a lot of people try to put out a false personality out there as somebody that they're not. And I am a man of faith. I am a Christian. I make absolutely no apologies about it. I'm proud of it. And so that's why I started talking about it. And, I thought, well, I might lose some listeners by doing this, but I don't care, because, if they're going to drop me because of that, then just so be it. That's the way it is.
Well, I really do appreciate that. You inspired me to start doing this. And if I haven't told you before, thank you so much for that. And thank you for everything that you've been doing. What's the future look like for at 493? You're still going strong.
Yeah. Well, the future is, obviously, I'm closing in on my 500th episode pretty soon. It's been a little over 10 years. I launched the podcast in August of 2009. So I want to do something real special for my 500th. And, Lloyd, you got me on this episode, so you want to be on my 500th episode?
I would be honored.
Okay, well, good. Then I'll announce it here first. Lloyd Bailey will be one of my guests on my 500th. Now, I'm only doing 2 a month now. So right. I guess it's going to take me another 4 months to get me to 500.
You're going to have to remind me. I have a short memory.
I'm sorry. It's going to take me 3 months. 3 months to get to 500. Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What prompted the change? You were doing shows every week for many years. What prompted the change to once every other week or twice a month?
That's a good question. And there were 2 things that prompted the change. Number one, time. I just didn't have the time to prepare because of my busy real job and family life and things like that to prepare every week. Actually, if you recall, I was doing 2 podcasts every week, 1 week, an episode every week. Yes, that was just way too much. That was way too much. And I was getting dissatisfied with the quality of what I was putting out because I was trying to rush it. I was thinking, oh no, it's Thursday. I haven't recorded my next episode yet. I got to hurry up and get something out there. And when I would listen back to it, I thought, nah. So I bumped it back to the 1st and 15th. So now I do it 2 episodes a month, the 1st and the 15th. And it's increased the quality of it. I think it's turned out better. And I look forward to it more. It was starting to get to be, like I said, it was a Thursday night revelation. Oh no, I don't have an episode prepared for this week yet. I didn't want it to be that way.
Right. I hear you. So you have gone from just doing the podcast to you and Ben Branham from Modern Self-Protection got together and started doing a series of videos, and you've been out teaching Talk about how that got started and what that's you traveling around the country doing some instruction as well.
Well, a little over 5 years ago, Ben and I got the idea over lunch one day to start the video membership that we call the Shooters Club. And we felt that what we were teaching live in classes could also be beneficial over video and better than just your ordinary YouTube video. So we made that our exclusive Shooters Club membership site, which is going very well, better than we thought it would be. And there's 80 videos up there. And actually, we've taken a lot of footage from our classes. We filmed a lot of our classes while we were teaching live. And that's a lot of what you see.
Right.
So you get the class without being at class. It's not the same. It's definitely not the same. But at least you get to see some of it and hear some of it.
Yep. Guys, got any questions for Bob before we send him on his merry way?
Yeah.
I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you because I kind of ripped off your idea for the mobile studio and did my little top twist on it.
And you know, Bill, I've listened to a lot of yours.
I wanted to give you credit for it for a long time, but I figured it was so obvious. I didn't want everybody to think that I thought.
Did you call it a mobile studio also?
No, Lloyd has called it a mobile studio.
Oh, Lloyd has called it a mobile studio.
Because that's immediately who it reminded me of.
Yeah, I'm usually stationary. I'm usually parked somewhere with the radio on.
Yeah. And you know, Bill, but that's okay. I'm glad you did that. I've listened to a lot of them, and they're very good.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot from your. It's you do the ballistic minute. Is that what it is?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's good. Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What you mentioned in you did a little promo spot for me talking about what you appreciated about the show. Can you give me a little bit of I'm digging for a shameless plug here, but
yeah, no problem.
what is it you liked about, and you said you listen, and I really do appreciate that. It means a ton coming from someone who inspired me to do this. What is it you like about Armed Lutheran Radio that keeps you listening? Aside from Bill and
yeah, it's everybody else. You know, Lloyd, I tell you, here's why I listened to your first episode. Because when you joined the Self-Defense Radio Network at that time, your show said the title Armed Lutheran Radio. I instantly knew right away this was going to be a mixture of guns and Christian faith, and that interested me, and that was why I listened to your very first episode. So what I like, Lloyd, is you've come right out from the gate, from the very first episode, and said we're going to put Christianity and guns and self-defense together. I really never even did that, but you packaged it that way, and that's what I liked.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. Congratulations to you on your success. I really do appreciate everything you've done over the years. Thank you for the inspiration, and Christ's blessings to you. And thanks again for taking the time to come on the show. And thank you for the invite. I look forward to being on episode 500 of Handgun World.
Well, you're very welcome, and thanks again for this opportunity. It's been great.
All right, folks. When we come back, we've got just a couple of segments left. We're going to head over to the left coast to visit with a man whose seminary project to teach theology by playing a game show became the long-running Table Talk Radio podcast. That's coming up next. Don't go away. All right. Welcome back. It's our 200th episode extravaganza, and we are back with another special guest. The creator and co-host of the long-running Table Talk Radio podcast and the pastor at Faith Lutheran Church in Rogue River, Oregon, Evan Goeglein, former guest. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and thanks for having me on.
So let me get all the rest of our crazy crew in here as well. Now, you've been a friend of the show from like season 1, I think. You were on the show 3 episodes first season, and you haven't been back. We gotta get you back on here.
Yeah, we need to rectify that.
Table Talk Radio. I know as much as you guys have been trying to quit, you just can't seem to give it up. 400 and what did I see? 480 some odd episodes now.
Yeah, it sounds about right. Crazy.
The show that just won't die.
Yeah, it's not for lack of trying, though.
Talk about how you got the inspiration to do this. Is a great story, and Pastor Wolfmueller told it when he was on the show once. I want to hear it from your mouth. How did you get
you're fact checking? Huh? See if it's fake news that what he's been talking about. Okay.
Well, it's coming from Brian, so you never know.
All right. Well, I did a little bit of radio when I was in high school, and I started in our small town a theological show. Had him on a few times, and then I went off to seminary. And so he always wanted to do something in radio, and I had a little bit of experience. So I said, well, why don't we do it? It's funny because I was in the middle of a seminary class where he had to do some kind of a project. So I kind of folded my work onto this the show as part of the project, just so I could use it as an excuse to work on it. So, got that homework assignment done, and then continued working on the idea for a podcast. We started out with the idea of actually doing kind of like a syndicated radio show, and we worked hard. We got advertising dollars, bought airtime on different radio stations, and we're just working our butt offs trying to get our sponsorship to get on airtime. Meanwhile, people are downloading our show on the internet. We're going, why are we spending all our time trying to get advertising dollars to be on radio stations? And we still are on a few. But meanwhile, this internet thing, podcasting, is taking off. So we just put all of our energy behind that, and it really took off. So, but really the idea behind the show was sort of Brian's idea. It was a theological game show. And the idea was to not take ourselves too seriously, but to take the theology seriously. So we play various games like Law or Gospel. We play things like Bible Bee, where you read a Bible verse and you have to guess what book of the Bible it's in, and various games that try to make it a little bit more engaging, not just kind of a dry discussion, but try to bring the listener in a little bit. So that's kind of what we're doing with Table Talk.
How are you? Where do you get the ideas for the games? You've got a huge selection of games that you guys play.
Well, usually they just kind of pop into our head when we're doing something else. But really, we have a liner somewhere in the show that says the games are just an excuse, and that really is true. That it really starts with what we want to talk about, and we think, well, what game would get us to that point? And so, we maybe if we want to analyze something that was in the news, for example, we'll think of a game that would get to that. Some of our older games is like Which Ladder, that looks at the ladder of moralism, mysticism, or rationalism. And so we'll play a clip, and then we'll ask, which ladder is it? Or we have a game called 10 Commandments in the News, where we look at the news story, then ask, how are the 10 Commandments engaged in this article? So just some ways to kind of get at talking points that get Christians thinking, but in a little bit more fun way.
We ripped off that last one, by the way.
Good. Well, it's
we're not paying any royalties for it.
Yeah. The idea is so that other people would do this in other contexts. So good for you. That's what we want to happen.
Yep. We've done Crime in the 10 Commandments, which is
cool. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yep. So you are the pastor at Faith Lutheran Church in Rogue River. And you have a radio. The reason that you're here is not only because you've been involved, sort of a guest on the show and a fan of the show from year one, but you have a radio station that your church operates. Was that something that came with the call, or was that because of your being a fan of radio and your interest in radio that you said, we need a radio station?
Yeah, well, so the radio station did not exist before I got there, but that wasn't on my radar or anything that I thought would be a project for us. But I happened to cross. This was I think back in 2013, 2014. I happened to cross this opportunity that the FCC puts out. It's called a low power FM license, and what it does is allows you broadcast up to 100 watts. And so they only have a filing window for this opportunity once every very so often. I think the last one before 2013 was the year 2000. So every 13 years or so, but they don't make any promises when they'll allow it to happen. So I found out about it and I went to the church and I said, hey, this is something that we could do. I have a little bit of experience. I think we could talk to the right people and make it happen. What do you guys think? And they loved the idea. And so we went through the licensing process, hired the right people to get the paperwork filed and the engineering behind it. I didn't know how to do any of that, but in 2015 we launched and we've been going ever since. So it's like I said, a small 100 watt broadcast, and we kind of have two goals with it. On the one hand, we want to get our theology, our doctrine out to the community so that people know what we believe and what we teach. But we also have emphasis on supporting the community. So we have a volunteer in town that does the local high school sports, for example, and things like that. So it's kind of a dual purpose radio station.
Cool. And Armed Lutheran Radio is on exactly one terrestrial radio station in the world, and it just happens to be KRRC 94.3 The Bridge, operated by Faith Lutheran Church in Rogue River, Oregon. Evan invited me to be part of the lineup, and I'm sure his congregation hasn't let him forget that.
Well, I mean, it's great. I think what you're doing is great, and kudos to you, because you're bringing it's not just a show about guns. It's also a show that considering the theology with it as well. And so I like those kinds of shows in particular because it draws maybe two interest groups together. And so whether maybe you're not a Lutheran, but you are interested in topics of guns, be it gun safety or competition shooting, or maybe you're not into guns, but you're more into the theological side, so that helps you get into it. So
you mentioned when you proposed this to me, you mentioned that you thought this would be a good fit for the area that Faith Lutheran is in. Why is that?
Yeah, well, so when I got the call to Oregon, I had certain assumptions about Oregon that are not true in the entire state. I mean, everyone knows that Oregon as a state leans left and has a lot of gun control laws and things like that. And so I just kind of assumed that was true of the entire state. When I actually got here to Southern Oregon, I found there's a very conservative mindset, politically speaking, in Southern Oregon. And it's like a lot of states, really. A lot of states have kind of the left political owned by the major city and where the legislature is. But a lot of the rural areas are very conservative. I find that's true in most states. And Oregon's no exception. So I was seeing the bumper stickers around, and they were not fitting with my assumptions about the state of Oregon. So, but yeah, so Southern Oregon is very conservative. They have a lot of conservative groups around, including that of gun rights and things like that. So it's a good fit for those reasons. Like I mentioned before, bringing kind of two different interest groups together in one show, it's perfect for that.
Absolutely. So, and we have done an episode, John and I did an episode about, what's the guy's name? Mark Knutson from Augustana Lutheran in Eugene. Who
Lutheran.
Right. Who heads this, I don't even remember the name of his group, but he was spearheading this campaign to pass gun control there, and actually I think it was confiscation, wasn't it, John?
Yeah, I believe so.
It was pretty radical, and he and other faith leaders, again in air quotes, had come together at his church to have this interfaith announcement of this campaign, and so we kind of fisked that whole thing and had fun with it. That turned into an entire episode. I remember the first time I had Brian, your co-host, on the show, and I remember the first time you guys mentioned the show on Table Talk Radio, and what were your early impressions of the podcast irrespective of what he thought of it, let's leave him out of this. Having heard it, what did you think?
Well, I mean, it's called the Armed Lutheran, so you kind of wonder, is this guy going around with guns blazing, saying, believe in this theology or else, or what's going on? No, not really. Like it's really in the name, right? I mean, you have both sides of what you're talking about. I mean, so there's always a discussion when we get into things that are that can be, I should say, political. So, for example, the classic political lines might be drawn with, like, gun control is one of them, but budgetary concerns, taxes, education, those are all kind of political things. Now, within the context of my church, there might be people who vary on what they think about education, for example, and there's no kind of biblically mandated you must think thusly about education, and so I think for that reason, a lot of pastors are sort of touchy about things that are seen as political, and so there's maybe a first impression wondering, what is this guy's agenda? I mean, what's he trying to pull off here? Like, are you saying that you're mandated by God to own a gun and open carry? I mean, is that what God has commanded? But upon a listen, I one of the things I liked about the show is that it didn't just talk about the political aspects of gun ownership. It talks about gun safety, sportsmanship. I don't know. Do you talk about hunting? Do you engage that at all? Oh, yeah. Right
Mia down here is our resident. There you go. She is our resident hunting guide.
Excellent. So I think that's fantastic, and that engages a lot of different topics that way. Then,
awesome. Well, thank you so much for inviting Armed Lutheran Radio to be a part of your lineup. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for your support. Please come back on the show again. I'd love to have you. I enjoyed the opportunities that we had to visit with you, and keep up the good work there at Rogue River, and good luck keeping Brian in line.
Yeah, your prayers would be appreciated for that. Thank you all. Thank you for all the work you put into the show too. I mean, I know that's a lot of work, a lot of editing, and you do a great job. It sounds very professional, and that's one of the reasons we like it on the station. And hope that it gets a broader listenership, because it's well deserved. So you keep up the good work as well.
Well, thank you very much. All right, folks, we will be right back with one more segment right here on our 200th episode Extravaganza right after this break. Welcome back to our 200th episode Extravaganza. We're joined now on the phone by the man, the myth, the legend, our friend and brother from another mother, Kenn Blanchard, the black man with the gun, joins us once again. Welcome back, Kenn. It's been way too long.
Man, thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate you letting me come on the show. 200, man. Way to go.
Thank you. And I owe that in large measure to you, because you were part of the inspiration for doing this, and you kind of pushed me off the ledge to get started. And we'll get to that in a minute. But I went and looked. You've done, is it, if my math is right, because some of the latest ones or the last ones weren't numbered, 620 episodes of Black Man with a Gun. Is that right?
Yeah, it's pushing more like 631.
Holy cow.
And it lasted over 12 years.
12 years. That is amazing. When people ask how I got started, back before the podcast, I was blogging, and I started listening to pro-gun podcasts, and the two that I gravitated to instantly, Handgun World with Bob Mayne and Black Man with a Gun. And I loved your show because the fun that you sounded like you were having just came through the speakers at you. Here's this guy sitting in his basement with John Wayne reciting the Pledge of Allegiance under the steps next to the washing machine, singing R&B and talking about guns and history. And you made it feel like you were talking to me and nobody else.
Oh, cool. Thank you, man.
Well, I loved it. The fun just oozed out, and you inspired me to create Armed Lutheran Radio. So thank you for that.
Man, that's all right. And my wife was hollering downstairs the whole time. What are you doing down there? Who are you talking to? You better not be watching no porn down there.
Well, and I think you said once when I talked to you the last time, you said you didn't know whether you were talking to anybody. But the fun thing was it felt like you were talking, whoever was on the other end listening, that felt like you were talking just to them, and there was nobody else.
Thank you. It's something I always wanted to do.
Well, that was my next question. What, way back when, let's go back in the Wayback Machine here 12 years ago, what made you, this is before podcasts were really a thing like they are now, what made you want to do this?
I was the kid that around Christmas asked for the same thing all the time. I wanted either a radio, which was a big deal when I was a kid. I remember getting my first AM radio only, and then an FM. That was a big deal. And then I got a cassette player, and I would sit downstairs, and I would do voice acting to all my Marvel comics, and my dad thought I was crazy. I didn't know that was a career, actually. I could have been the king of Decepticons. Who knows where that thing could have went. But I was a guest on Mark Vandenberg's show. He had one of the very first gun podcasts, Gun Rights Radio. And that early November, when I was his guest, and he said, yeah, man, I got my laptop and my computer and all this stuff put together, and it's on the web, and I can show you how to get started. And it just awoke the little kid in me that wanted to be on the radio since forever. I actually went to broadcasting school for a short minute. Found out it was a scam, well, the school that I went to anyway, and learned how hard it was to get in the radio business. If you didn't have your Arbitron ratings, you were gone in 45 days, and a lot of people pay to play to be on the radio, and it's just a really cutthroat business. Well, it was back then, but now with this new thing called a computer, and the internet, I could fulfill my dream and be on the radio and make my own show. And there was no rules. Well, there still isn't. It was a gun show, but I had met so many people being a gun rights activist in the 90s, helping change concealed carry, that I had met some amazing people. And I had their phone numbers, and I had their contact, and they were my guests. And they didn't even know what they were doing, but I got my first 200 interviews was because of the people I met in the gun rights movement. And I tried everything on my podcast. I tried singing R&B. I tried singing the blues. I sang country. I didn't even know I could sing. I just tried it because I figured, well, no, just me and you listening. Ain't nobody else paying me no attention. So if you tell me to shut up, then I won't do it again. I tried narrating audio drama, what they call it now. I had a friend who was a burgeoning writer, and he wrote these crazy stories about zombies, and he took my idea and fleshed it out. So I did the voices for that. Some people loved that show. Some people hated that part of the show. I had comedians that never saw the light of day, but they were on my show. I had a little bit of everything. It was truly like the 70s variety show. Yep. That you might see with Donnie and Marie Osmond or somebody. I was the guest. I was the Flip Wilson of this podcast, and we were pro-gun and pro-God and pro-America, and folks were like, I didn't even know you thought that way. And I'm thinking, yeah, it's the real me. And then the scary part is when I actually met people, they really knew me. They listened, they heard me, and it freaked me out because I'm thinking, how do you know that my podcast is in the basement next to the washing machine? I forgot I told y'all, but that just part kind of skimmed over my head. I had a blast, dude. It was amazing, and yeah, you became like one of the family, and it felt like we knew you because you shared so much of who you really are. It was I know, right? It was so amazing, and so when I started thinking about doing a podcast, you were the person I reached out to with questions, and I like to joke that you at some point got tired of all the questions and just gave me what I think was the greatest of advice ever. Do you remember what it was? You said, dude, if you're going to do it, just do it.
And I've never forgotten that.
Yeah.
And I understand now.
Everybody's born with a voice. Everybody has a message. Everybody has a style. Just do yours.
Yep. For those who are thinking about, because I now understand why at first I was like, okay, that seems kind of cold. But the more I started just, like you said, just doing it, it made more sense. And now it's so, I understand it so much better. For those who are thinking about making their own podcast and or maybe have some doubts or they just don't know where to go or how to get started, why is that important? Why is that advice so important?
I think it's like nature. We revere eagles a lot, but if you look at how animals treat their offspring, sometimes it's kind of cold. You climb up a mountain and you see an eaglet sitting in a nest. That my mother doesn't guide it straight to the ground. It kind of pushes that joker to the corner and nudges it off the cliff. It will learn to fly or die. And somewhere on the way down, you catch it. And the words and all my explaining will never get it. You have to get dirty. You have to get in the weeds. You have to find, you fail and you get back up. And that's what makes podcasting better than almost any other medium.
Yep. So now you've been doing this for 12 years. You did this for 12 years, longer than that. Longer, with very few exceptions, longer than pretty much anybody in the pro gun world. You consult with fledgling podcasters. You've spoken at Podcast Movement. You've kicked people like me out of the nest and said, go fly, do your thing.
And you jamming too.
What's the most important lesson through those 12 years that you've learned?
I learned that I didn't have the answers. I was looking for, I was like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. I had the answers all the time. I was using the gun movement as my audience because they were my safety net. You guys, my family that believes in the Second Amendment, we're all different faiths and cultures and ethnicities, but we're all kind of connected with the gun thing. I found out that I didn't even have to hide behind the gun thing. I could just be Kenn. And that's where I'm going to take off in 2020. More Kenn and less trying to, hide behind something or just use one piece. I'm going to see how far that goes.
All right. Cool. I want to talk about that in a minute. Before I do, I wanted to ask you, like I said, you were a huge inspiration both in the fun and the advice and the way I love the segments, and that's part of why I did my show the way I do, I think, because the show is in segments. You've been on the show, I know it's been a long time. Have you listened at all? What do you think of the show?
Oh, you got it, man. You got a voice all your own. I like the way when you have like other guests, how you guys talk. You have a natural communication style. It took me a minute to get it to where I was comfortable. And then you even dabble in the graphics and you do a lot of stuff, man, on your own. And that's the part that people don't recognize, that when you do podcasting, you have to become jack of all trades. You're the producer, cook, bottle washer, trash man, you're everybody. And that part, I look at how smooth your show runs, and I go, yeah, he's like a duck. Them legs are kicking underneath their water, and he's making it look smooth.
Well, Mama Duck taught me well.
Cool, man, cool.
So let's talk about what you're up to nowadays, because you ended Black Man with a Gun in November, and like you just said, 2020 is going to be more Kenn and less other sorts of distractions. What are you thinking? What are you working on? What's next for you?
I've learned to do more like Jesus. He taught by parables, and my strongest episodes were stories, and I wove history into the little bit of history that I had in my 57 years of being on the planet. So when I talked about the New Year's Eve, Christmas, I talked about how my grandmother talked about watch night service and how that was connected. When we talked about the black codes and gun rights, I would even add the parts of my family struggle through the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. And I learned that that's like my gift. So I want to be able to do that about everything, not just about firearms. Because sometimes I would go on a tangent and I would get somebody would email me and say, hey, man, that's pretty good, even though it had nothing to do about the Second Amendment. And I'm like, yeah.
Everybody wants to steer you back on course where they think you're supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. So since I figure I gave 631 episodes of gun stuff, I got a little bit more to go. And I'm talking about health and fitness and everything else that I like, motorcycles, family, you name it. Just if I can help somebody out. There was a character that Richard Pryor used to do all the time called Mudbone.
Oh,
and Mudbone was this bum that sat on the corner. It was a wino, I believe. People used to go to this wino for wisdom. He was kind of the version of some old guy on the mountain.
Right.
We don't have many of those old guys around that we go listen to. I think even Bill Cosby had a guy he used to mimic all the time about some old guy somewhere. And I am that old guy now. I've messed up and done some stuff that I can help out other people. They don't have to make my mistakes. I'm gonna make fun of myself. I'm gonna tell the story. I'm gonna share wisdom and hopefully entertain and educate at the same time. That's my goal for the future.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it because I was not one of those people that when you strayed away from the strictly Second Amendment stuff, when you started telling the stories about your grandma, I thought that I love those stories. So I am really excited, looking forward to what you do as the Mudbone of the podcasting world, what you can do for 2020.
That's exactly what it is. There's a term for it. And it's funny that after I was doing history, I found out that in the old days, in the French and West African coast, there was a person who was a storyteller and a musician, and he was an elder, and he told stories to the young. All their history was oral, and they called him the griot. And the old griot was the person that Alex Haley actually modeled himself after to tell his story about his family, Kunta Kinte, and roots. So being the griot of America is what I'm calling this show. I'm going to be the American griot. The storyteller. And we're all connected. We just don't know it yet.
I love it. I can't wait to hear it. Really looking forward to it. Thank you so much for all your years of gun rights advocacy, for 630 plus episodes of amazing podcasts in the Pro 2A space and everything else you're doing. Thank you for the inspiration for this show and for putting up with all those questions back in the day. Christ,
you're doing good.
Well, I appreciate that very much, and I thank you so much for the inspiration. Christ blessings to you. Merry Christmas, and thank you for taking the time to celebrate with us this week.
My man, you got it.
All right, folks, we will be right back with more right after this break. Welcome back to our 200th episode of Armed Lutheran Radio, joined by my awesome cast, Sergeant Bill Sylvia, Mia Anstein, and Pastor John Bennett. This is our final segment. Each of you kind of, as we wrap things up here, your final thoughts about the... Final thoughts about...
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
I can't figure out where the camera is. We're like the Brady Bunch.
Nice.
Finish up by just each of you sort of final thoughts about the past 4 years and about the show as we kind of finish things off here tonight.
Who do you want to go first?
Going all okay. I'll just pick one of you. I was John.
Well, the last 4 years, when you asked at the beginning if you thought if we thought that it would last this long, in a way, I'm kind of surprised that we're still doing this, but I'm glad we're still doing it because it's a lot of fun. I have to say that I really like, even though I was kind of dreading at first the idea of having my very own segment every other week and thinking, gosh, how am I going to get this all done? But I really liked the change because it seemed like we got to the point where we were just dealing with, it was the same garbage, different day kind of thing. And we were getting to the point where even though we were having new material from these various anti-gun articles, it was still the same old tired arguments.
Right.
And so the changes that we've made I feel have created a bit of freshness for the show. And it's in my opinion, it's a much needed improvement. So I do.
Well, I appreciate it. Mia, you're next.
I'm next. I like the new schedule also, the way you've formatted it, except that I forget when the weeks are, so that's kind of hard. But it was easy to know every Friday.
Right.
Now I'm like, was that Friday or is this next Friday?
And I was worried about, I was like, I'm sending out these reminders every week. All right, so if we do it every other week, they'll have more time and I won't have to remind them. Now I'm finding I still have to remind you because I can't remember which week it is. So
I even have it on my calendar, but still. Then I have to go find technology to upload.
That's true. You face some challenges that the rest of us don't, which is being out in the middle of nowhere a lot of times, trying to put together, and I don't always take that into account. So bad on me, and I apologize for that. But thank you so much for braving the lack of technology, driving into town for 5 minutes to record something. There's been a couple of episodes where I sent you a message about a segment and you were like, hold on, I'll drive into town, and
gone.
Yeah, she'll drive into town where she has internet reception, record something, and then upload it and drive back to camp.
Yeah.
Bill?
It's worth it though. It's fun.
All right, my friend, you're last, but not least.
What was the question again? No, seriously, what was the question?
Final thoughts about the last 4 years and your experience.
I think it's been a blast. I still kind of wrap my head around it's been 4 years. It doesn't feel like it's been 4 years. I mean, I've watched my kids grow in 4 years, and yeah, it's been 4 years, but it's just been fun. I mean, I know you probably feel like you're pulling teeth sometime trying to get, clips and episodes out of us, but it's not. It's kind of like Mia said. It's not because we're don't have anything to talk about. We don't want to do it. It's because we're like, did I do that? Did I have already done this? It seems like it's been. I've just had a blast, to be honest with you. I love this episode because I love having the interaction with everybody. I wish we were all local so we could all sit down.
Yeah.
Have a cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A cup of coffee. and we could talk face to face. But this is the next best thing. And I think it's really cool because we get to kind of be who we are, and just it's like 4 people sitting around at you name the place, Cheers, I guess, and we get to talk about what we're doing.
Everybody knows your name.
Exactly. Norm. And even though it's been 4 years, it doesn't feel like it's been 4 years, and I see us doing another 4 years pretty easy. I mean, this is too much fun. This is too much good stuff. I know I listen to a lot of podcasts, and if I wasn't even on this show, I'd be listening to this show. So
for me, it's just me hanging out with some good people and interacting with some good folks. And I really appreciate it. Mia, I barely get to see you. I've seen you a couple times, and you're awesome. I love seeing you. I love listening to your clips. I love listening to Pastor John's clips. And Lloyd, you're the man.
Thank you. And where else can you sit around drinking Cuddy Sark in a Olaf pajamas and not be ridiculed for it?
Well, I'm not drinking Cuddy Sark, but I have been ridiculed. I have the volume up pretty good. I heard y'all talking about the dojo.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's only part of it. My wife kind of almost wishes I would quit shooting so that she wouldn't have all these targets on the wall, but it's not happening. I have taken a break just because.
Tell her she needs to design like decorator targets.
Ooh.
Yeah, there you go. There's a side business.
New idea was just born.
Throw pillows. One side target side.
That's throw pillows with the target on one side. Then when you get people to show up visiting, you just flip them over. Yeah, that's a great idea, John.
That's a great idea.
You might want to patent that right now. Well, I want to wrap things up here. Just finish by thanking you guys for everything that you've done to help make this show what it is, because I found somewhere, I don't know what I did with it. It's in a pile of stuff on my desk, but I found about a month ago, I found the notes that I had written down where I was planning out the original ideas for this show back in 2015, early 2016. It was awful. It was absolutely awful. This show would not be what it is without your help, without what you do every week. And you all have such great personalities and experiences and expertise that have just made this show better in so many ways that, it's better than I ever imagined it would be. I love you guys. Thank you so much for everything that you've done. Merry Christmas. And
Merry Christmas to you.
And hopefully we will do that face-to-face next year. Doing a little preliminary planning. Maybe we can work that out.
Well,
that's
show too.
I know. I still want to go. Mia, I'm trying to become like a firearms instructor with my department so I can go to SHOT Show.
Do it.
And if I can, I'll need a valet, and I'll take that guy.
Hey, awesome.
He'll be my Cato.
Most of the people listening
Yes,
will
I'll
not
make him wear the
understand.
mask. I will make him wear the mask.
Start to say most of the people listening probably will not get that reference.
What?
Only you and the three of us. Anyway, thank you so much again. I really do appreciate it, and thank you for taking the time to do this tonight. I appreciate, especially John. You got to be up in the morning to do your thing, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Mia. Thank you. I love you. Appreciate what you're doing. It's you brought a breath of fresh air to in a show that was had a little, as my wife said, had a little too much testosterone. So thank you so much, and Bill. I love you, brother. Looking forward to getting out to the range to shoot with you more next year.
Call me anytime.
Absolutely. Folks, that's all the time we've got for tonight. Thank you all for listening. I want to thank the members of the Reformation Gun Club for your support. Thank you to our special guests, Aaron Israel, Bob Mayne of the Handgun World podcast, and Evan Goeglein from Table Talk Radio. And finally, thank you to our beloved listeners for downloading and listening and doing it faithfully for 200 weeks. 4 years since we launched in January of 2016. Without you, none of this would be possible. Now, we're going to be re-airing our Christmas special on Christmas Eve, and then we're all going to kind of take a break, and we'll be back with our 5th year starting in January of 2020. That'll be on Sunday, January 12th. Until we meet again in January, Christ's blessings to all of you. Merry Christmas. And Happy New Year. Keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time. Awesome, guys.
For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback, or a review on iTunes, and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.